7 months ago, Sophia Leal vanished, unmarried, pregnant and heartbroken. Now she's built a new life at Blue Rock Farm, but when the baby's father tracks her down, the fragile peace she's found is put to the ultimate test. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun shone bright over Blue Rock Farm, casting long shadows across the weathered barn and fields of green. Sophia Leal pulled her oversized flannel shirt tighter around her body as she made her way toward the barn. At 24, she should have been starting a promising career in the city, not hiding away on a farm in the middle of nowhere, but life had a way of changing plans. "Morning," she mumbled to the farmhand who passed her on the path. She kept her eyes down, the way she always did. Less eye contact meant fewer questions, and questions were the last thing she needed. 3 months at Blue Rock Farm had given her calluses on her hands and a routine that helped her forget, at least during daylight hours. Wake up at dawn, eat, a quick breakfast alone in her small cabin, then work until her body ached enough to match the ache in her heart. Today she was assigned to stack feed sacks in the main barn. Simple enough work, though the sacks were getting heavier by the day. Or maybe it was her body that was changing. Sophia paused, placing a protective hand over her stomach, still mostly flat beneath her loose clothes. 6 months, she whispered to herself. Just 6 more months, and then we'll figure it all out. The pregnancy had been a shock, though looking back it shouldn't have been. Mark had been charming, successful, and so convincing when he talked about their future together. Then came the positive test, and suddenly his future plans didn't include a baby, or her. "It's not in my life plan," he had said coldly, packing his things. "And honestly, I'm surprised at you. I thought you were smarter than this." Those words still cut through her like glass. Smart. She had a college degree and dreams of her own, but none of that mattered now. Her parents would be devastated, their good Catholic daughter, unmarried and pregnant. And her friends. They were all busy, building careers, not families. The judgment in their eyes would be unbearable, so she ran. Answered an ad for seasonal farm help, packed what little she owned and disappeared. Sophia grabbed another feed sack, trying to ignore the dull ache in her lower back. The morning sickness had finally passed, but new discomforts arrived daily to remind her of the life growing inside her. Careful with those. The deep voice startled her, and Sophia nearly dropped the sack she was lifting. She turned to see Elijah Rhodes standing in the barn doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the morning light. At 30, the owner of Blue Rock Farm had the weathered face of someone who had seen more than his share of hard times, despite his relative youth. "I'm fine," she said quickly, hoisting the sack higher. "I can handle it." Elijah watched her with those quiet, observant eyes of his. He never said much, which suited Sophia just fine. Less talking meant fewer lies she had to tell. "There's water in the cooler," he said finally. "It's going to be hot today." Sophia nodded her thanks and returned to her work. She had noticed how Elijah treated his workers: fair pay, decent hours, and simple kindness. It was more than she expected when she took the job, and more than she felt she deserved these days. What she didn't know was how Elijah had been watching her, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but with a concern that grew each day. He noticed how she worked harder than anyone else, as if trying to prove something. How she always ate alone. How she wore layers even as summer approached. By midday, the heat was brutal. Sophia wiped sweat from her brow and reached for another sack. Her vision swam slightly, dark spots dancing at the edges. She should take a break, drink some water. But breaks meant sitting with the other workers, making small talk, answering questions about where she came from and why she was here. She lifted the sack and felt her knees buckle slightly. Just a small stumble, barely noticeable. But it was. "Enough, that's enough for today." Elijah was there again, suddenly beside her. Sophia hadn't heard him approach. "I'm fine," she insisted, steadying herself. "I just lost my balance for a second." "You're not clumsy," he said quietly, taking the sack from her hands. His eyes seemed to see right through her careful facade. "You're hiding something." Sophia felt the blood drain from her face, her secret discovered, her safe haven gone. She would have to leave again, find another place where no one knew her shame. "I don't know what you're talking about," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Elijah set the sack down and gestured toward the barn. "Talk to you, Mom. Come on, we need to talk." Fear gripped her heart as she followed him outside and across the yard to the main farmhouse. In 3 months, she'd never been inside. The farmhouse stood apart from the workers' cabins, a 2-story white structure, with a wide porch wrapped around it. It looked like something from another time, solid and unchanging. Elijah led her to the porch and pulled out a chair for her. "Sit, please." Sophia perched on the edge of the seat, ready to flee at any moment. Her mind raced with excuses, explanations, lies. Instead of sitting across from her as she expected, Elijah disappeared into the house. He returned moments later with 2 glasses of iced tea, beads of condensation running down the sides. "Drink," he said, handing her a glass. "It'll help, with the heat." The tea was cold and sweet, exactly what her body needed. Sophia took small sips, waiting for the accusations, the dismissal, the judgment. But Elijah just sat quietly, looking out over his fields. The silence stretched between them, until finally, he spoke. "My wife used to sit right where you're sitting, now." Sophia glanced up, surprised. She'd heard whispers among the workers that the boss had been married once, but no one spoke of it directly. "She loved watching the sunset from this porch," he continued, his voice soft with memory. "Said it was the most beautiful view in the county. What happened to her?" Sophia asked before she could stop herself. "Cancer. 4 years ago." His words were simple but carried the weight of grief still fresh. "She was 25. We had plans for a family, this farm full of children. Then she got sick, and 6 months later she was gone." Sophia didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry," seemed inadequate. "Life doesn't always go according to plan," Elijah said, finally looking at her directly. "Sometimes it throws things at you that you never expected to face. And when that happens, you have 2 choices, run from it or stand and fight." The words hit too close to home. Sophia felt tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. "Whatever it is you're running from," Elijah said gently, "whatever you're hiding under those loose clothes even in this heat, you won't fight this. Alone? Not here." The tears came then, despite her best efforts. Months of fear and shame and loneliness broke through the careful wall she had built. Sophia covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She felt Elijah move beside her, not touching her but close enough that she could feel his steady presence. "You don't owe me your story," he said, when her tears had subsided. "But you're safe here, and so is the child." Sophia looked up at him, shocked. "How did you know?" A small, sad smile crossed his face. "My wife was pregnant when we found out she was sick. I recognized the signs." He paused. "And I saw how careful you are when you lift things, how you hold your hand over your stomach when you think no one's looking." Shame washed over her anew. "I'll pack my things. I can be gone by tonight." "Why would you leave?" "Because I lied to." "Are you?" "Because I'm—" The words caught in her throat. "You're what? Pregnant?" "Last I checked, that's not a crime on my farm." His voice was gentle but firm. "The cabin you're in now isn't ideal for a baby, though. There's a room here in the main house that would work better. It gets good morning light and it's closer to the kitchen." Sophia stared at him in disbelief. "You want me to stay? To live? In your house?" "This place is too big for just me," he said simply. "Has been for years, and farm work is no job for someone in your condition, at least not the heavy lifting. But I could use help with the books, ordering supplies, managing the hands. The woman in town who used to do it moved to be with her daughter last month." "But you don't even know me," Sophia protested. "I know you work harder than anyone I've hired in years. I know you're responsible and careful, and I know what it's like to face something scary all alone." He stood up, as if the matter was settled. "The room is yours if you want it. The office, job too. Same pay, easier on your body." Sophia sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. After months of judgment and rejection, this stranger was offering her safety, work, and a place to stay. No questions asked. "Why would you do this?" "For me?" she finally managed. Elijah looked at her, really looked at her, as if seeing past all her careful defenses. "Because someone should," he said simply. "Now finish your tea before it gets warm. I'll show you the room when you're ready." With that, he left her on the porch, alone with a life-changing decision. Sophia looked out at the fields, golden in the afternoon sun. For the first time in months, she felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Hope. The room was small but perfect. A single bed with a patchwork quilt, a dresser, a rocking chair by the window that overlooked the eastern fields. Sophia ran, her hand over the smooth wood of the chair. "It was Sarah's, my wife's," Elijah said from the doorway. "She used to rock there and read, said it would be perfect for when the baby came." The room felt sacred somehow, filled with the dreams of another woman. "I can't take her room," Sophia whispered. "It's not her room anymore," Elijah said gently. "Hasn't been for years. It's just a room with furniture, waiting for someone to make it their own." Sophia turned to him, still not understanding his kindness. "What will the other workers think?" "They'll think you got promoted to office manager and moved closer to the office," he said with a shrug. "Which is the truth. And when I start showing more when the baby comes, then they'll adjust, same as we all do when life changes." He paused. "This is a farm, Sophia. Life and death happen here every day. A new baby won't shock anyone." The simplicity of his view was startling. In her world, her old world, an unmarried pregnancy was cause for whispers, judgment, shame. Here, it was just another part of life's cycle. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "Say you'll stay, say you'll let someone help you for once." His eyes were kind but serious. "Whatever you're running from, it doesn't have to define you." The words touched something deep inside her. For months, she had defined herself by her mistake, her shame, her fear. But maybe there was more to her story than that one chapter. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll stay." Elijah nodded, satisfied. "Good. We'll move your things tomorrow. For now, get some rest. Dinner's at 6 if you want to join me, but no pressure. There's a bathroom down the hall if you want to clean up." After he left, Sophia sank into the rocking chair, letting her hand rest on her slightly rounded stomach. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't alone and afraid. "Maybe we'll be okay," she whispered to her unborn child. "Maybe this is where we're meant to be." The setting sun cast the room in golden light, and Sophia felt the knot of tension she had carried for months begin to loosen. She wasn't naive enough to believe all her problems were solved. The baby's father was still out there. Her family still didn't know. The future was still uncertain, but for today, in this moment, she had found a safe harbor. And for now, that was enough. The days that followed brought changes Sophia never expected. The office work was a welcome relief from physical labor, and she discovered she had a talent for organization that Elijah appreciated. The farm's books had been neglected for months, and she found satisfaction in bringing order to the chaos of receipts and invoices. The farmhouse, too, began to change with her presence. Sophia couldn't help but notice how sparse and utilitarian everything was, clean but unlived in, as if Elijah merely existed in the space rather than truly inhabiting it. Small touches began to appear. Fresh flowers from the garden in a jar on the kitchen table, the smell of real coffee brewing in the morning, instead of the instant kind he seemed to live on. Actual meals in the evening, instead of sandwiches eaten standing up. Elijah noticed, but said nothing. He simply accepted each small change with a nod or sometimes a hint of a smile. They fell into an easy routine, separate during the day as they worked, then quiet dinners together where they talked about the farm, the weather, safe topics that didn't probe too deeply into either of their pasts. 2 weeks after moving into the farmhouse, Sophia found the courage to ask the question that had been on her mind. "Don't you want to know about the baby's father? About why I'm here alone?" They were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching fireflies begin to dance over the fields. Elijah was quiet for so long that Sophia thought he might not answer. "Do you want to tell me?" he finally asked. The question surprised her. Did she want to tell him? To speak aloud the humiliation, the rejection, the fear? "I thought I loved him," she said softly. "Mark. He was successful, charming. He made me feel special. When I told him about the baby, he said I'd done it on purpose to trap him. He said it wasn't his problem and that I should take care of it if I wanted him to stay. The words tasted bitter in her mouth, but somehow saying them aloud dimmed their power over her. I couldn't do that, I just couldn't. So he left, said I was on my own. She looked down at her hands. My family is very traditional. They would have been so ashamed. My friends all have careers, dreams. They wouldn't understand why I'd throw it all away for a baby. So I ran. Elijah listened without interruption, his face showing no judgment, only quiet attention. So that's my sad story, Sophia finished, trying to sound lighter than she felt. Pretty cliché, right? Naive girl gets her heart broken, ends up alone and pregnant. No, Elijah said firmly. That's not your story. Sophia looked at him confused. That's just something that happened to you, he continued. Your story is that you chose your child over an easier path. You had the courage to start over somewhere new. You work hard and take care of yourself despite everything. That's not cliché, Sophia, that's strength. His words hit her like a physical force. She had been so focused on her shame that she never considered there might be another way to view her choices. What about your family? Elijah asked. Will you tell them eventually? Sophia sighed. I don't know. Maybe after the baby comes. They live in Arizona. My dad has a heart condition. I don't want to stress him. And the father, Mark, does he know where you are? No, nobody does. I deleted all my social media, changed my number. It's better this way. Elijah nodded, respecting her decision, even if he didn't fully agree with it. Well, for what it's worth, I think your baby is lucky to have a mother willing to sacrifice so much. The compliment warmed her in a way she hadn't expected. For months, she had seen herself as a failure, a disappointment. Hearing someone, especially someone like Elijah, who seemed to embody quiet strength and integrity, frame her choices as brave was a perspective she hadn't considered. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. He gave her a small nod, and they sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell completely, the day's heat giving way to a cool evening breeze. Later that night, in the privacy of her room, Sophia stood sideways before the small mirror and lifted her shirt. The curve of her stomach was more pronounced now, unmistakable to anyone looking closely. For the first time, she placed both hands on her belly and smiled. We're going to be okay, she whispered. I promise. And for the first time in months, she actually believed it. As summer progressed, so did Sophia's pregnancy. By her 5th month, there was no hiding it anymore, even under loose clothes. She had been dreading the moment the truth would be obvious to everyone, expecting whispers and judgment from the farmhands. But when the day came that she finally wore a fitted maternity top that clearly showed her condition, the reactions surprised her. My sister's expecting too, said Jose, one of the older workers, showing her a picture on his phone of a young woman with a rounded belly. Due in November. When's yours coming? December, Sophia replied, still waiting for the judgment that didn't come. Winter babies are special, he said with a warm smile. My mother always said they have old souls. And that was it. No questions about a father, no disapproving looks. Just acceptance, as if her pregnancy was the most natural thing in the world, which of course it was. Elijah noticed the change in her after that day. She stood straighter, smiled more easily, even laughed sometimes, a sound he realized he had never heard from her before. It transformed her face, made her look younger, more like the 24-year-old she actually was instead of someone carrying the weight of the world. For his part, Elijah found himself doing things he hadn't done in years. He fixed the loose step on the porch that he'd been ignoring. He ordered new curtains for the kitchen. He brought home a book about pregnancy and childbirth that the woman at the bookstore recommended, leaving it casually on the coffee table as if it had always been there. If Sophia noticed these changes, she didn't comment on them. But she did. Start leaving the door to her room open when she wasn't sleeping, as if to say this wasn't just a temporary arrangement anymore. This was becoming home. One evening, Elijah came in from the fields later than usual to find Sophia in the kitchen, attempting to reach a mixing bowl on a high shelf. Without thinking, He moved behind her and reached up, easily retrieving the bowl. "Thanks," she said, turning around. They were suddenly very close, close enough that he could smell the faint scent of her shampoo, something floral and light. For a brief moment, neither of them moved. Then Sophia stepped back, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "I'm making enchiladas," she explained, gesturing to the ingredients laid out on the counter. "My grandmother's recipe. I thought, well, you've been so kind to me, I wanted to do something nice for you." "You don't have to cook for me," Elijah said, though the idea of a home-cooked meal that wasn't his own basic cooking was appealing. "I want to," she insisted. "Besides, I miss Mexican food. My mom used to make these every Sunday." Elijah nodded, understanding the longing for family traditions. "Can I help?" Sophia looked surprised by the offer but nodded. "You can grate the cheese." They worked side by side in comfortable silence, the kitchen filling with the rich smells of cumin and chili powder. It felt domestic in a way that made Elijah both uncomfortable and strangely content. This was what he and Sarah had planned, cooking together, preparing for their child, building a life. "You're thinking about her," Sophia said softly. Elijah looked up, startled. "What? Your wife? I can tell. Your eyes get a certain look." She arranged the filled tortillas in a baking dish. "It's okay, you should think about her. Remember her." Elijah didn't know what to say. Most people avoided mentioning Sarah, as if speaking her name might break him somehow. "She sounds like she was an amazing woman," Sophia continued. "The way you've talked about her, she must have been very special." "She was," Elijah agreed, surprised to find that talking about Sarah felt right somehow. "She would have liked you." The words slipped out before he could consider them. But they were true. Sarah, with her warm heart and easy acceptance of others, would have embraced Sophia without hesitation. Sophia smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I wish I could have met her." The oven timer beeped, breaking the moment. Sophia turned to slide the enchiladas into the oven, and Elijah busied himself with setting the table. Dinner that night was different from their usual quiet meals. Sophia told stories about growing up in Arizona, about her grandmother who taught her to cook, about college where she studied business management before dropping out to help when her father got sick. Elijah found himself sharing too about growing up on this farm that had been in his family for generations, about meeting Sarah in high school, about their dreams for the future that were cut short too soon. It felt good to talk about Sarah, to speak her name aloud in this house where her absence had been a heavy silence for too long. After dinner, they sat on the porch as had become their habit. The night was warm, crickets providing a soundtrack to their conversation. "Oh!" Sophia suddenly exclaimed, her hand going to her stomach. Elijah looked alarmed. "What is it? Are you okay?" A look of wonder crossed her face. "The baby. I felt it. Move, really move, not just flutters." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Do you want to feel it?" The question hung in the air between them. It seemed like such an intimate thing to place his hand on her body, to feel the life growing inside her. But Sophia was already reaching for his hand, placing it gently on the curve of her belly. "Wait," she instructed. "Sometimes it takes a minute." Elijah held perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe, and then he felt it, a distinct movement against his palm, like a tiny foot or elbow pressing outward. "That's amazing," he whispered, a sense of awe washing over him. Sophia nodded, her own expression mirroring his wonder. "It makes it real, doesn't it? There's actually a little person in there." For a moment, they were connected by this miracle, this reminder of life's persistence, even in the face of hardship. Elijah reluctantly withdrew his hand, but the feeling lingered, warmth and movement and possibility. That night, as Sophia prepared for bed, she heard Elijah outside her door. He knocked softly, and when she opened it, he was holding something in his arms. "I found this in the attic," he said, holding out what looked like a wooden cradle. "It was mine when I was a baby. My father made it. I thought maybe for the baby." Sophia ran her hand over the smooth wood, noting the careful craftsmanship, the gentle rocking motion when she pushed it slightly. "It's beautiful," she said, genuinely touched by the gesture. "Are you sure?" "It should be used," he said simply, not gathering dust in an attic. As he set the cradle in the corner of her room, Sophia felt something shift between them, a recognition that what had started as temporary help was becoming something more permanent, more meaningful. "Thank you, Elijah," she said softly. "Not just for this, but for everything. For making me feel like I'm not facing this alone." He met her eyes, his expression serious. "You're not alone, Sophia. Not anymore." As he left her room, Sophia placed her hand on her stomach, feeling the baby move again. For the first time since discovering her pregnancy, she felt not just acceptance of her situation, but actual joy. This baby, once a source of fear and shame, now represented possibility and new beginnings. What she didn't know was that while she was finding peace at Blue Rock Farm, someone else was looking for her. Mark had discovered she was pregnant, and the implications of a child, his child, being born without his knowledge had financial implications he couldn't ignore. In a city hundreds of miles away, he was making phone calls, hiring people to find her. It was only a matter of time before her past caught up with her present, but that night, rocking gently in the chair by her window, Sophia knew only contentment and the growing feeling that perhaps she had found not just a safe place to stay, but a real home. Mark Daniels drummed his fingers on his mahogany desk, impatience written across his handsome face. At 32, he was already a senior investment banker with a corner office overlooking the Phoenix skyline. Everything in his life was precise, planned, and under his control, except for one loose end that was becoming increasingly problematic. "You're telling me you still can't find her?" He snapped at the private investigator sitting across from him. The investigator, a former police officer named Ray, shifted uncomfortably. She covered her tracks well, closed her bank accounts, cancelled her credit cards, deleted all social media. "It's like she wanted to disappear." "Of course she wanted to disappear," Mark muttered. "She's carrying my child." When Sophia had first told him about the pregnancy, he'd dismissed it as her problem. He had a 5-year career plan that didn't include an unexpected baby or a wife he wasn't ready for. But 3 months after she vanished, his mother had reminded him of something critical: the Daniels family inheritance. His grandfather's will specified that the family fortune would be divided among all legitimate Daniels heirs. If Sophia had this baby and it carried his DNA, that child would be entitled to a share of millions. "Keep looking," Mark instructed, sliding an envelope across the desk. "She has family in Arizona. Check with them again." "They claim they haven't heard from her." Her mother seemed genuinely worried. Mark frowned. If Sophia hadn't gone to her family, where could she be? She wasn't exactly the outdoorsy type. The Sophia he knew liked shopping malls and fancy restaurants, not roughing it. "She'll need medical care," he said thoughtfully. "She's what, 5 months along now? Check OB/GYNs within a 100-mile radius of Phoenix. And maternity clothing. Stores. She'll need those eventually." Ray nodded, making notes. "And when I find her, what then?" Mark leaned back in his chair, his expression calculated. "Then I'll remind her that we have unfinished business. That baby is half mine after all." What he didn't say was that once he found her, he'd make sure the child was born with his last name and under his control. Sophia had been a mistake, but he wasn't about to let her cost him millions in family money. Hundreds of miles away, at T. Blue Rock Farm, Sophia sat on a blanket under the shade of an old oak tree, watching Elijah repair the fence in the south pasture. The early fall sun was gentle, and a cool breeze rustled the leaves overhead. At 6 months pregnant, her body had changed dramatically. Her once flat stomach now a pronounced dome beneath her maternity dress. She was supposed to be working on the farm's quarterly tax forms, but instead found herself distracted by the man, working methodically in the distance. Over the past month, something had shifted between them, small touches that lingered, conversations that stretched late into the night, a growing comfort that felt dangerously close to something more than friendship. Elijah looked up and noticed her watching. He raised a hand in greeting and she waved back, feeling a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the baby's movements. This was dangerous territory. She hadn't come here looking for romance. She'd come here to hide, to figure out her life, to prepare for her baby's arrival. And Elijah, he'd lost his wife, was still grieving in many ways. The last thing either of them needed was the complication of feelings. And yet, there was something so steady about him, so genuine. Unlike Mark, who had dazzled her with expensive restaurants and designer gifts, Elijah offered something much simpler but far more valuable: unwavering support and quiet respect. She watched as he loaded his tools into the back of his pickup truck and started walking toward her. He moved with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. No wasted motion, nothing to prove. "Enjoying the sunshine?" he asked as he approached, wiping his hands on a rag. "Trying to," Sophia replied, gesturing to the stack of papers beside her. "These tax forms are putting me to sleep." Elijah chuckled and sat down on the blanket beside her, careful to leave a respectful distance between them. "Never was much good at paperwork myself. That's why I hired you." "Smart man," she teased, surprised at how easy it felt to joke with him now. A comfortable silence fell between them, the kind that doesn't need to be filled with words. Elijah picked up a fallen oak leaf, turning it over in his hands. "I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow," Sophia said suddenly. "In Riverdale." Elijah nodded. "Do you need me to drive you?" She'd been taking his truck into town for her monthly appointments, but tomorrow was different. "It's the big ultrasound. They'll be able to tell if it's a boy or a girl if I want to know." "And do you want to know?" Sophia placed a hand on her stomach, feeling the now familiar movements beneath her palm. "I think so. It would make it feel more real to be able to say he or she instead of it." "Makes sense," Elijah said, then hesitated before adding, "I could come with you, if you want company." The offer hung in the air between them. Having him there would mean something, would cross a line they had been carefully maintaining. "You don't have to," she said, giving him an out. "I know I don't have to." His eyes met hers, serious and sincere. "I'd like to, but only if you're comfortable with it." Sophia considered what it would mean, walking into that waiting room with Elijah beside her, letting the nurses and other patients assume they were a couple expecting a baby together. It was a fiction, but one that would feel almost real. "I'd like that," she admitted finally. "It gets lonely in those waiting rooms." Elijah nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Then it's settled. What time do we need to leave?" "The appointment's at 10, so maybe 8:30. It's about an hour drive. I'll be ready." As they gathered up the blanket and papers, Sophia felt a strange mix of emotions: gratitude, anticipation, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. Having someone to accompany her to this important appointment meant more than she could express. That evening after dinner, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies appear in the growing darkness, Sophia found herself opening up about her fears. "What if I'm not a good mother?" she asked, voicing the worry that had plagued her for months. "I don't exactly have the most stable situation. No job security beyond what you've given me, no savings, no real plan." Elijah considered her words carefully before responding. "My father used to say that children don't need perfect parents. They need parents who try their best and love them without condition." He looked at her directly. "From what I've seen, you already love this baby enough to change your entire life for them. That counts for a lot." His confidence in her was touching, but it didn't erase all her doubts. "But practically speaking, I'll need a more permanent place eventually. Childcare when I go back to work. All the things babies need." "Sophia," Elijah interrupted gently, "you know you can stay here as long as you need. The job is yours for as long as you want it, and we can convert the room next to yours into a nursery. This farm has raised generations of children. One more won't be a problem." The generosity of his offer stunned her. "I can't ask you to do all that." "You didn't ask. I offered." He seemed slightly embarrassed by his own words. "This place was meant for a family. It's been too quiet for too long." Sophia felt tears well up, those pregnancy hormones making her emotions closer to the surface than usual. "Why are you so good to me? You barely know me." Elijah was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the distant horizon where the last light of day was fading. "Maybe I see something of myself in you," he said finally. "After Sarah died, I was lost, didn't know how to move forward. People offered help, but I was too proud to take it. Thought I had to handle everything alone." He glanced at her. "That nearly broke me. No one should have to face their hardest days alone." The simple honesty of his words touched something deep inside her. Without thinking, Sophia reached out and took his hand, her fingers lacing with his. "Thank you," she whispered, the words inadequate for the depth of her gratitude. His hand was warm and calloused from farm work, but his touch was gentle as he squeezed her fingers in return. They sat like that, hand in hand, as darkness fell completely around them, neither willing to break the moment by speaking again. The waiting room of Riverdale Women's Clinic was cheerfully decorated in soft blues and greens with framed pictures of babies on every wall. Sophia sat nervously flipping through a parenting magazine, while Elijah thumbed through his phone beside her, both acutely aware of the other couples in the room, real couples with matching wedding rings and shared last names. "Leal?" a nurse called, looking up from her clipboard. Sophia stood, and after a moment's hesitation, Elijah rose to follow her. The nurse smiled at them both. "First ultrasound?" "First big one," Sophia corrected. "We had a quick one at 12 weeks, the nurse led them to an exam room, instructed Sophia to lie on the table, and told her the technician would be in shortly. After she left, an awkward silence filled the room. "You can wait outside if this is weird," Sophia offered, suddenly conscious of how intimate this situation was. Elijah shook his head. "I'm fine if you are." The ultrasound technician, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, entered and introduced herself as Diane. "And you must be Dad," she said to Elijah with a friendly smile. Before either of them could correct her, she was already preparing the equipment. "All right, this gel might feel cold," she warned, as she squeezed the gel onto Sophia's exposed stomach as the wand moved across her abdomen. The room filled with a rapid whooshing sound, the baby's heartbeat. Elijah's eyes widened at the sound. "Good strong heartbeat," Diane commented approvingly. She adjusted the wand and suddenly the screen showed a clear profile, a tiny nose, a round head, small hands moving. "Oh my God," Sophia whispered, tears springing to her eyes. The abstract idea of a baby became startlingly real in that moment, a little person with fingers and toes and a face. She reached out instinctively, and Elijah took her hand, his own eyes fixed on the screen with wonder. "Would you like to know the sex?" Diane asked. Sophia nodded, unable to speak through the emotion tightening her throat. Diane moved the wand, studying the screen. "It's a girl," she announced with a smile. "Congratulations, a girl. Sophia would have a daughter." The knowledge felt profound, changing everything somehow. "A girl," Elijah repeated softly, squeezing Sophia's hand. Diane took measurements and pictures, explaining each development and assuring them that everything looked perfect. "She's right on track, good size, all organs developing normally." When they left the clinic 30 minutes later, Sophia clutched the printout of the ultrasound in her hand, still dazed by the reality of her daughter. "Are you hungry?" Elijah asked, as they walked to his truck. "There's a good diner near here, might be nice to celebrate." Celebrate! The word caught Sophia off guard. Her pregnancy had been many things, a shock, a challenge, a reason to run, but never something to celebrate. Until now. "I'd like that," she said. The diner was a small, family-owned place with checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh pies. In the air, they were seated in a booth by the window, and Sophia found herself studying the ultrasound picture again. "She's beautiful," Elijah said, looking at the grainy black and white image. Sophia laughed. "She looks like an alien, but I agree." Their easy conversation was interrupted when Sophia noticed a family at a nearby table. A mother with a little girl about 3 years old, the child's dark curls bouncing as she colored on a kid's menu. "That'll be you soon," Elijah said, following her gaze. "It's hard to imagine," Sophia admitted. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is happening." "Have you thought about names?" The question surprised her. She had been so focused on getting through each day that naming her daughter seemed like a distant concern. Not really. I mean, I always liked the name Elena. It was my grandmother's name. Elena, Elijah repeated. It's pretty. What would you name her? Sophia asked impulsively. If she were yours? The question crossed another invisible line, acknowledging the role Elijah was gradually taking in her life, in their lives. He seemed to consider the question carefully. I always liked the name Grace, simple but meaningful. Elena Grace, Sophia tried the combination. It sounds right together. Something shifted in Elijah's expression, a softening around his eyes. It does, doesn't it? Their food arrived, breaking the moment, but something had changed between them. The fiction they had allowed the nurse to believe, that they were a couple expecting a baby together, suddenly felt less like a lie and more like a possibility. After lunch, they walked down Riverdale's main street, stopping to look in the window of a baby boutique. Tiny dresses and soft blankets were displayed artfully alongside stuffed animals and miniature shoes. We should get something, Elijah suggested, to remember today. Inside, Sophia was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of baby items. How could such tiny humans need so much stuff? Elijah seemed equally out of his depth but determined. He wandered the aisles until he found a small section of stuffed animals. After careful deliberation, he selected a soft brown teddy bear wearing a pink ribbon. Every little girl needs a teddy bear, he said simply. The cashier wrapped the bear in tissue paper, commenting on what a beautiful couple they made and how exciting it must be to be expecting their first child. Neither Sophia nor Elijah corrected her. As they drove back to the farm, the teddy bear and ultrasound pictures safely tucked in Sophia's purse, she found herself wondering what it would be like if this weren't just pretend. If Elijah really were her baby's father, if they really were a family. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Mark Daniels stared at the report on his desk, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. After weeks of dead ends, his investigator had finally found a lead. A medical records clerk at Riverdale Women's Clinic had been persuaded, with the help of a substantial bribe, to confirm that a Sophia Leal had an appointment that morning. The clerk didn't have an address, but did note that the patient was accompanied by a man, not the baby's father according to the intake form, but someone named Elijah Rhodes. A quick internet search revealed that Elijah Rhodes owned Blue Rock Farm, about 20 miles outside of Riverdale. It wasn't definitive proof that Sophia was staying there, but it was the best lead they'd had in months. Mark picked up his phone. Ray, I need you to check out a farm near Riverdale. Blue Rock Farm, owned by Elijah Rhodes. I think our missing mother-to-be might be hiding out there. This was almost too perfect. Sophia, the city girl who complained when they had to walk more, then a block to a restaurant, was living on a farm. The image was laughable. She must be truly desperate. Well, her desperation would work in his favor. Once he found her, he could offer her a deal, financial support in exchange for shared custody, and more importantly, his name on the birth certificate. His lawyer had assured him that would be enough to secure the child's inheritance rights, and if Sophia refused? Mark wasn't concerned. She was alone, pregnant, working as what? A farmhand? She couldn't afford a legal battle. And he would make it clear that fighting him would only make things worse for her. I'm coming for you, Sophia, he murmured to himself, and for what's mine? Back at Blue Rock Farm, Sophia placed the teddy bear on the dresser in her room, smiling at how right it looked there. Soon she would need to think about a crib, changing table, all the practical items a baby required. But for now, this small token felt like the first real acknowledgement of her daughter's impending arrival. Elijah had gone straight to the fields, after dropping her off, mentioning something about checking the irrigation system before dark. She suspected he needed some time alone. The day had been emotional for both of them, crossing boundaries and raising questions neither was ready to answer. Sophia changed into comfortable clothes and headed to the kitchen to start dinner. Cooking had become her way of contributing to their shared life in the farmhouse, and she found unexpected joy in preparing meals that Elijah clearly appreciated after years of eating whatever was quickest and easiest. As she chopped vegetables for a stew, she allowed herself to daydream. What would it be like to raise her daughter here? To watch her take her first steps across this kitchen floor, to hear her laughter echo through these rooms, to see Elijah teach her about animals and growing things. The fantasy was so vivid, she could almost see it. Elena running through the fields, Elijah lifting her onto his shoulders, the three of them as a family. But that wasn't the plan. She had come here to hide, to save money, to figure out her next steps, not to impose on Elijah's life indefinitely, not to mistake his kindness for something more. The sound of the screen door opening interrupted her thoughts. Elijah entered. "Boots muddy from the fields. Something smells good," he said, towing off his boots by the door. "Just a simple stew," Sophia replied. "It needs to simmer for a while." He nodded and disappeared to wash up. When he returned, he seemed thoughtful, almost hesitant. "I've been thinking," he began, leaning against the counter, "about what you said before, about needing a nursery." Sophia stirred the stew, not meeting his eyes. "I didn't mean to pressure you. I know I can't stay here forever." "Why not?" The question was so direct it startled her into looking up. "What?" Elijah ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had come to recognize as a sign of nervousness. "Why can't you stay? The farm is doing well, better than it has in years with you managing the books. The house is big enough and—" He hesitated. "I like having you here." Sophia felt her heart beat faster. "Elijah, you've already done so much. I can't keep taking from you." "You're not taking," he said firmly. "You're giving too. This place was just a house before. You've made it a home again." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight with emotion. "What about when the baby comes? Newborns are exhausting. They cry all night. Your life would be completely disrupted." A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "I'm a farmer, Sophia. I'm used to being up before dawn, and I don't mind disruption, not for something that matters." She set down the wooden spoon she'd been holding, needing to focus on this conversation. "What are you saying exactly?" Elijah took a deep breath. "I'm saying I want you to stay. Both of you. Not just for a few months, but longer. As long as you want." "As what?" Sophia asked, needing clarity. "Your tenant? Your employee?" "As whatever feels right to you." He took a step closer. "I know this is fast. I know you came here looking for a safe place. Not whatever this is becoming. And if all you want is friendship and a place to raise your daughter, that's enough. But if there could be more someday." He left the sentence unfinished, the possibility open. Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. This man, this kind and steady man, was offering her something she hadn't dared hope for, a future here with him, not out of obligation or pity, but because he wanted her to stay. "What about Elena's father?" she asked quietly. "He's still out there. If he ever found out about her, there could be complications." "Then we'd face them together," Elijah said, simply. "I told you the day you moved in, you won't fight this alone. I meant it then, and I mean it now." Sophia thought about the month she had spent at Blue Rock Farm, how she had arrived broken and afraid, and how gradually, day by day, she had found herself again, not the naive girl who fell for Mark's empty promises, but a stronger version of herself. And Elijah had been there, steady and kind, asking for nothing but offering everything. "I need time," she said finally, "to think about what this means for all of us." Elijah nodded, respecting her need for space. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." The simple promise meant everything. For so long, people in her life had been conditional, there as long as she met their expectations, gone when she didn't. But Elijah was different. He saw her, really saw her, and stayed anyway. "Thank you," she whispered. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. No thanks needed. The stew bubbled on the stove, forgotten for the moment as they stood close, the future stretching before them with new possibility. Neither of them knew that miles away, a private investigator was already planning his visit to Blue Rock Farm. That the past Sophia had run from was about to catch up with her. That the peace they had found together was more fragile than they realized. For tonight, there was just this: a quiet kitchen, the promise of tomorrow, and the growing certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. The following morning, Sophia woke to the sound of hammering. Curious, she dressed quickly and followed the noise to the room next to hers, the one Elijah had mentioned converting to a nursery. She stood in the doorway, watching as Elijah measured and marked the wall. He was so focused on his task that he didn't notice her until she cleared her throat. "You're up early," she said, leaning against the doorframe. He turned, looking slightly embarrassed to be caught. "I was just checking measurements, thinking about where a crib might fit, maybe a changing table against that wall." The fact that he was already planning, already making space for her daughter, touched her deeply. "You don't have to do this yet." "I haven't even decided—" "I know," he interrupted gently, "but if you do decide to stay, I want you to know there's a place ready for her." He set down his tape measure. No pressure, just possibilities. Sophia entered the room, looking around with new eyes. It was a good size, with a large window that faced the eastern fields. Morning light streamed in, warming the hardwood floors. She could imagine it painted a soft yellow, curtains fluttering in the breeze, a rocking chair where she could nurse her daughter while watching the sunrise. "It would be perfect," she admitted. Elijah smiled, pleased by her approval. "I thought so too." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a shared vision of what could be if she stayed. The moment was interrupted by the sound of a vehicle coming up the long drive to the farmhouse. Elijah frowned. "I'm not expecting any deliveries today." They moved to the front of the house, Elijah slightly ahead of Sophia as they looked out the window. A dark sedan had parked in front of the house, and a man in a suit was getting out, consulting a piece of paper in his hand. "Stay here," Elijah said, his protective instinct kicking in. "I'll see what he wants." Sophia nodded, suddenly nervous. Something about the man seemed official, threatening. She watched through the window as Elijah stepped onto the porch and greeted the stranger. She couldn't hear their conversation, but she saw the man show Elijah something, a badge or ID of some kind. Then the man handed Elijah what looked like a photograph. Even from a distance, Sophia could see Elijah's posture stiffen. When Elijah glanced back toward the house, his expression confirmed her worst fears. Somehow, someone had found her. Her past had caught up with her, and the future she had just begun to imagine might be over before it even began. "I'm looking for this woman," Ray said, showing Elijah a photograph of Sophia. "Her name is Sophia Leal. I have reason to believe she might be staying here." Elijah kept his expression neutral, even as his mind raced. The man had introduced himself as a private investigator, which meant someone had hired him to find Sophia. There was only one person Elijah could think of who would be looking for her: the baby's father. "What's your interest in her?" Elijah asked, buying time. "I'm not at liberty to discuss that," Ray replied smoothly. "But I can assure you no one wants to harm her. It's a family matter." Family matter. The words sounded ominous somehow. Elijah thought of Sophia, how far she had come from the frightened young woman who arrived at his farm, how much she had healed, and now this man threatened to undo all of that. "I can't help you," Elijah said firmly. "I don't know this woman." Ray looked skeptical. "She was seen with you at the Riverdale Women's Clinic yesterday." "Are you saying—" "That wasn't her," Elijah silently cursed. "Someone at the clinic must have talked." "I don't discuss my personal business with strangers," he said coldly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." He turned to go back inside, but Ray's next words stopped him. "Mr. Rhodes, I understand your desire to protect her, but my client has legal rights here. That's his child she's carrying." Elijah turned back slowly. "And who exactly is your client?" "Mark Daniels, the baby's father." The name meant nothing to Elijah, but the title, the baby's father, carried weight. He thought of Elena, the little girl Sophia was carrying. Whatever his personal feelings about the man who had abandoned Sophia, that man was still connected to the child by blood. "If your client cares so much about this child, where has he been for the past 6 months?" Elijah asked, unable to keep the edge from his voice. Ray shrugged. "That's between them. My job is just to find her." He handed Elijah a business card. "When you see her, give her this. Tell her Mr. Daniels wants to talk. It would be better for everyone if this doesn't have to get complicated." The implied threat was clear. Elijah took the card, if only to get the man to leave. "Have a good day, Mr. Rhodes," Ray said, returning to his car. Elijah watched until the sedan disappeared down the drive, the dust settling in its wake. Only then did he go back inside, where Sophia waited, her face pale with fear. "It's him, isn't it?" she whispered. "He found me." Elijah nodded grimly. "Not him directly. He hired someone, a private investigator." He handed her the business card. "His name is Mark Daniels. He wants to talk to you." Sophia took the card, her hand trembling slightly. "This is my fault. I should have known he'd find me eventually." She looked up at Elijah, her eyes filled with regret. "I'm sorry I brought this to your door." "Hey," Elijah said gently, taking her hands in his. "You have nothing to apologize for. We'll figure this out together, remember?" Sophia nodded, but he could see the fear had returned, the same fear she'd carried when she first arrived, as if all the progress of the past months had been erased in an instant. "What does he want?" she asked, her voice small. The investigator didn't say specifically, just that it's about the baby. Sophia laughed bitterly. "That's rich. He made it very clear he wanted nothing to do with this baby. Why would he be looking for me now?" Elijah had been wondering the same thing. People didn't change that dramatically without reason. If this Mark had abandoned Sophia when she told him about the pregnancy, what would make him suddenly interested in finding her months later? "Whatever he wants," Elijah said. "You don't have to face him alone. I'm right here with you." Sophia squeezed his hands gratefully. "What do I do? Should I call him?" Elijah considered their options. "You don't have to do anything right away. Take some time to think about what you want. He doesn't know for certain that you're here." "But he suspects," Sophia pointed out. "That investigator will be back, and next time he might bring Mark with him." The thought of confronting the man who had hurt Sophia made Elijah's jaw clench. But this wasn't about his feelings. It was about what was best for Sophia and her baby. "What are you thinking?" he asked, wanting to follow her lead. Sophia took a deep breath. "I think I need to find out what he wants, why he's looking for me after all this time." She looked down at the card in her hand. "But I'm scared, Elijah. What if he tries to take her away from me?" The fear in her voice broke his heart. "He can't just take your baby, Sophia. There are laws protecting mothers." "But he has money," she said. "He can afford lawyers. I can't." "You're not alone in this," Elijah reminded her firmly. "Whatever happens, whatever he wants, we'll face it together, I promise." Sophia nodded, drawing strength from his certainty. "Okay, I'll call him. But not today. I need time to prepare myself." "Take all the time you need," Elijah assured her. But as they moved through the rest of their day, a shadow hung over them. The knowledge that their peaceful existence at Blue Rock Farm had been discovered, and that whatever came next would test the bond that had formed between them. That night, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge, Sophia made her decision. "I'm going to stay," she said quietly, "if you still want us to." Elijah turned to her, surprised by the timing of her declaration. "Are you sure? After today, I thought maybe—" "Today is exactly why I'm sure," she interrupted. "When that investigator showed up, my first thought wasn't about running again. It was about fighting. For my daughter, for the life we could have here." She took his hand. "With you." The simple touch connected them, grounding them both in this moment of decision. "I don't know what Mark wants," Sophia continued, "but I know what I want. I want Elena to grow up here where it's peaceful and beautiful. I want her to know you, to learn from you." She looked up at him, vulnerable but certain. "I want us to be a family, if that's still what you want too." Elijah's heart swelled with emotion. Despite the threat hanging over them, despite the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring, Sophia was choosing to stay, choosing him, choosing the life they could build together. "It's what I want more than anything," he said softly, his voice rough with feeling. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. But Sophia met him halfway, her lips finding his in a gentle kiss that held the promise of all they could be together. When they parted, Sophia rested her forehead against his. "Whatever Mark wants, whatever happens next, we'll face it together." "Together," Elijah agreed. In the distance, an owl called, its haunting cry carrying across the darkened fields. Tomorrow would bring challenges, confrontations, perhaps even heartbreak. But tonight, in this moment, there was just the two of them, the stars overhead, and the precious knowledge that whatever storm was coming, they would weather it side by side. The morning after Sophia made her decision to stay, she sat at the kitchen table with Elijah's cell phone in front of her. The business card the investigator had left was beside it, Mark's number staring up at her like an accusation. "You don't have to do this now," Elijah said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Sophia covered his hand with her own. "Yes, I do. The longer I wait, the more time I'll spend worrying about what he wants." She took a deep breath. "I need to know what we're facing." Elijah nodded, respecting her decision. "I'll be right here." With trembling fingers, Sophia dialed the number. It rang 3 times before a familiar voice answered. Mark Daniels. Just hearing his voice again after all these months made Sophia's stomach clench. This was the man who had charmed her, promised her the world, then abandoned her when she needed him most. "It's Sophia," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. There was a pause, then, "Sophia, I've been looking for you." "So I heard. Your investigator found me." "You're a hard woman to track down," Mark said, his tone casual, as if they were old friends catching up. "How are you feeling? How's the pregnancy?" The false concern in his voice made her anger flare. "Cut the act, Mark. You made it very clear 6 months ago that you wanted nothing to do with me or this baby. What do you want now?" Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice was cooler, more businesslike. "We need to talk in person. There are things to discuss about the baby." "Like what?" Sophia demanded. "You said it wasn't your problem, remember?" "Things have changed," Mark replied. "I've had time to think, and I realize I was hasty in my initial reaction. This is my child too, Sophia. I have rights." The word rights sent a chill down her spine. Elijah must have sensed her fear because he moved closer, his steady presence giving her strength. "What kind of rights are you suddenly interested in?" she asked. "Let's discuss this face to face," Mark said smoothly. "I'm willing to drive out to see you. Tomorrow afternoon would work for me." Sophia wanted to refuse, to tell him to leave her alone, but she knew this confrontation was inevitable. Better to have it on her terms with Elijah by her side. "Fine," she agreed reluctantly. 2 o'clock, but we'll meet in town at the cafe on Main Street in Riverdale, not at the farm." "Fair enough," Mark conceded. "I look forward to seeing you. Sophia, we have a lot to talk about." After she hung up, Sophia let out a shaky breath. "He's coming tomorrow. Wants to meet at the Riverdale cafe." Elijah nodded. "Good choice. Public place, neutral ground." "He said he has rights," Sophia said, her voice catching. "What if he wants custody? What if he tries to take Elena away from me?" Elijah knelt in front of her, taking both her hands in his. "Listen to me. He can't just show up after 6 months and take your baby. That's not how it works. At most, if he pursues legal action, he might get visitation rights. But even that would take time, court proceedings. But he has money for lawyers," Sophia reminded him, her old fears resurfacing. "I don't." "If it comes to that, we'll figure it out," Elijah promised. "But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let's hear what he has to say." Sophia nodded, trying to calm her racing thoughts. "Will you come with me tomorrow? I don't think I can face him alone." "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," Elijah assured her with a gentle squeeze of her hands. "Wherever you go, I go, remember?" His unwavering support was like a life raft in the stormy sea of her emotions. "Thank you," she whispered. Elijah lifted one hand to her cheek, his touch tender. "You never have to thank me for standing by you, Sophia. That's what people do when they—" He hesitated, then finished simply, "when they care about each other." The words he didn't say hung in the air between them, too new and fragile to voice just yet. But Sophia heard them anyway, felt them in the gentle way he touched her, saw them in the depth of concern in his eyes. "I care about you too," she said softly. They spent the rest of the day trying to maintain their normal routine, but tomorrow's meeting loomed large in both their minds. Sophia found herself absent-mindedly rubbing her growing belly. as if trying to protect Elena from the uncertainty ahead. That night, sleep eluded her. She tossed and turned, playing out different scenarios in her mind, each worse than the last. What if Mark demanded she return to Phoenix? What if he threatened legal action unless she complied with his wishes? What if he tried to take her daughter away? Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and made her way to the kitchen for a glass of water. To her surprise, Elijah was already there, sitting at the table with a mug of tea in front of him. "Couldn't sleep either?" she asked, taking a seat across from him. He shook his head. "Too many thoughts." "Me too." Sophia poured herself a glass of water. "I keep trying to figure out what Mark could want after all this time. It doesn't make sense. He was so clear about not wanting anything to do with the baby." Elijah considered this. "People do change their minds," he said carefully. "Maybe he regrets how he treated you." Sophia gave a short, humorless laugh. "You don't know Mark. He doesn't do regret. Everything is calculated, planned. If he's looking for me now, it's because he wants something." "Then we'll find out what it is," Elijah said simply, "and we'll deal with it together." The quiet confidence in his voice was reassuring. Sophia had spent so many months carrying her burdens alone that having someone to share them with still felt like a miracle. "What if he tries to take me to court?" she asked, voicing her deepest fear. "I can't afford a legal battle." Elijah reached across the table and took her hand. "If it comes to that, we'll find a way. I have some savings. The farm is doing well. We'll get you a good lawyer." The casual way he offered his resources, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, touched her deeply. "I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering." His eyes held hers steadily. "Sophia, when I said I wanted you to stay, that I wanted us to be a family, I meant all of it. The good parts and the challenging parts. That includes helping you fight for your daughter if necessary." Family. The word filled her with both longing and fear. "We've known each other for such a short time," she said softly. "Are you sure you want to take this on? My complicated life, a baby that isn't yours, a legal battle with my ex?" "I'm sure about you," Elijah said simply. "The rest is just details." In the quiet of the midnight kitchen, with moonlight streaming through the windows, Sophia felt something settle inside her, a certainty that whatever happened tomorrow, she wasn't facing it alone. "Not anymore. Try to get some sleep," Elijah suggested, squeezing her hand gently before releasing it. "Tomorrow will be easier if you're rested." Sophia nodded and returned to her room. This time sleep came more easily, as if her mind had finally accepted that some burdens were meant to be shared. The Riverdale Cafe was bustling with the afternoon lunch crowd when Sophia and Elijah arrived the next day. They had come early to secure a table in the corner where they could see the door but still have some privacy. Sophia had dressed carefully in one of the few maternity outfits she owned, a simple blue dress that couldn't hide her 7-month pregnancy but made her feel put together. She wanted to face Mark with dignity, not looking like the frightened girl who had run away. "Are you okay?" Elijah asked, noticing how she kept glancing at the door. "As okay as I can be," she replied, taking a sip of her water. "It's strange to think about seeing him again after everything that's happened." Elijah reached across the table and took her hand, a gesture that had become natural between them. "Remember, you're not the same person you were when you left him. You're stronger now." His words bolstered her confidence. He was right. She had changed, grown. The woman who had fled Phoenix in shame and fear was not the same woman sitting here today. At precisely 2 o'clock, the cafe door opened and Mark Daniels walked in. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. He looked exactly as she remembered, tall, impeccably dressed in an expensive suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. His eyes scanned the room and landed on her, a smile spreading across his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. Sophia felt Elijah's hand tighten around hers as Mark approached their table. "Sophia," Mark greeted her, his gaze taking in her pregnant form before shifting to Elijah with obvious assessment. "And you must be Elijah Rhodes." "That's right," Elijah replied, his voice level but with an undercurrent of steel. Mark took the seat across from them without waiting for an invitation. I appreciate you agreeing to meet with me, Sophia. You're looking well. Pregnancy suits you. The compliment, delivered with Mark's practiced charm, made Sophia's skin crawl. Let's skip the small talk, Mark. Why are you here? What do you want after all this time? Mark's smile faltered slightly at her directness. Always straight to the point. That's one of the things I admired about you. He glanced at Elijah. Is he staying for this conversation? Yes, Sophia said firmly. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Elijah. Mark's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly before he nodded. Very well. As I mentioned on the phone, I've had time to reconsider my position regarding our child. You mean, after... You told me to take care of it, and that it wasn't your problem. Sophia couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. I reacted poorly, Mark conceded with a practiced look of regret. I was surprised, caught off guard. I've since realized the importance of family. Something about his phrasing struck Sophia as odd. The importance of family, she repeated. What does that mean exactly? Mark straightened his already perfect tie, a gesture Sophia recognized as his way of preparing for a business negotiation. My grandfather passed away recently. His will includes provisions for all Daniel's heirs, and there it was, the real reason for his sudden interest. Not concern for her or their child, but money. So this is about an inheritance, Sophia said. Flatly. Mark had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. It's more complicated than that. Yes, there's a substantial inheritance involved, but this is also about doing the right thing for our child. I want to be part of her life. Her? Sophia? Caught the pronoun. How did you know I'm having a girl? A flicker of discomfort crossed Mark's face. The investigator must have mentioned it. The point is, I want to provide for her, give her the advantages my name and resources can offer. Your name, Sophia repeated. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You need your name on the birth certificate for her to qualify as a Daniel's heir. Mark's silence confirmed her suspicion. What exactly are you proposing? Elijah asked, speaking for the first time since the conversation began. Mark seemed to remember his presence and gave him an appraising look. I'm offering financial security for Sophia and the baby. A generous monthly stipend, a college fund, the best healthcare money can buy. All I ask in return is shared custody and that the child carries the Daniels name. Shared custody. Sophia's voice rose slightly. You want to be a part-time father to a child you didn't even want? A child you haven't bothered to think about for 6 months? Mark leaned forward, his tone becoming more insistent. People change, Sophia. Becoming a father has made me reevaluate my priorities. I'm offering your daughter a life of privilege and opportunity. Our daughter already has everything she needs, Sophia said firmly. A safe home, people who love her, a community to grow up in. On a farm in the middle of nowhere? Mark scoffed, his mask of civility slipping. Is that really what you want for her? Manual labor and rural education instead of private schools and international travel? Elijah tensed beside her, but Sophia squeezed his hand, silently asking him to let her handle this. What I want for her, Sophia said calmly, is to be raised by people who value her for who she is, not what she represents. Who love her unconditionally, not because of what she might inherit. Mark's expression hardened. I'm trying to be reasonable here, Sophia. To offer you a fair arrangement. But make no mistake, that child carries my DNA, and I have legal rights. If we can't come to an agreement, I'm prepared to take this to court. The threat hung in the air between them. Sophia felt a momentary wave of the old fear, but it was quickly replaced by a calm determination. She had known this was coming, had prepared herself for it. Go ahead, she said quietly. Take me to court. Explain to a judge how you abandoned me when I told you I was pregnant, how you suggested I take care of it, how you had to hire a private investigator to find me because you couldn't be bothered to check on me for 6 months. Then explain how your sudden interest coincides perfectly with an inheritance that requires your name on the birth certificate. Mark's face flushed with anger. Don't think you can intimidate me, Sophia. I have resources you can't imagine. The Douai. Best lawyers money can buy. And I have the truth, Sophia replied steadily, and someone who stands by me. She glanced at Elijah, drawing strength from his unwavering support. Mark's gaze shifted between them, a calculation happening behind his eyes. "I see. You found yourself a replacement father for our child." His tone was dismissive. "How convenient." Elijah spoke then, his voice quiet but firm. "What Sophia has found is someone who respects her choices and supports her decisions. Something you clearly never did." Mark's eyes narrowed. "This doesn't concern you, Rhodes. This is between Sophia and me." "That's where you're wrong," Elijah replied evenly. "Sophia isn't alone in this, not anymore." The implied threat in Elijah's words was clear. If Mark wanted a fight, he would have to face both of them. Mark seemed to reassess the situation, recognizing that his intimidation tactics weren't working. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. "My attorney's information. Have your lawyer contact him to discuss terms." He stood, straightening his suit jacket. "I'd prefer to handle this amicably. Sophia, for our daughter's sake. But one way or another, I will be part of her life." With that, he turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Sophia and Elijah sitting in stunned silence. "Well," Sophia said after a moment, "at least now we know what he wants." "Money," Elijah said with disgust. "It's always about money with men like him." Sophia picked up the attorney's card, staring at the embossed lettering. "He wasn't bluffing about taking this to court." "Neither were you," Elijah reminded her. "Everything you said was true. Any judge would see through his sudden interest in fatherhood." Sophia nodded, though uncertainty still gnawed at her. But what if they don't? What if his expensive lawyers convince them that he deserves a chance, that Eleanor would be better off with his resources? Elijah took both her hands in his. "Sophia, look at me." When she met his eyes, he continued, "Courts don't award custody based on who has the most money. They look at what's best for the child. You've been there for your daughter from the beginning. You've made every decision with her welfare in mind. That counts for a lot more than private schools and trust funds." His confidence helped calm her racing thoughts. "You're right. I know you're right. It's just, I never imagined having to fight him for her." "You won't fight alone," Elijah reminded her gently. "I meant what I said. We'll face this together." Sophia felt tears well up in her eyes, overwhelmed by his steadfast support. "Why are you doing all this for me? For us. It's not your battle." Elijah's expression softened. "Because I love you," he said simply. "Both of you." The words, spoken so plainly, hit Sophia with the force of revelation. Love. That's what this was. This feeling that had been growing between them over the months. Not gratitude or dependence or convenience, but love. "I love you too," she whispered, the truth of it washing over her like a wave. "I think I have for a while now." Elijah leaned across the table and kissed her softly, right there in the middle of the Riverdale Cafe, not caring who saw. When they parted, Sophia saw in his eyes the same certainty she felt in her heart. "Let's go home," he said, helping her to her feet. "We have plans to make." The next week passed in a blur of activity. True to his word, Mark's attorney contacted them, formally requesting a paternity test and outlining terms for a custody arrangement. Sophia, with Elijah's support, found a family law attorney in the nearest city who specialized in custody disputes. "He's going to request a DNA test," their lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Diane Murphy, explained during their first meeting. "We can't avoid that. If he's the biological father, he does have certain rights." "What kind of rights?" Sophia asked, her hand protectively covering her stomach. "At minimum, visitation rights," Diane explained. "Given that he's had no involvement in the pregnancy, and there's evidence he initially rejected any responsibility, it's highly unlikely he'd get anything close to full custody. But the court might award joint legal custody, which means he would have a say in major decisions about the child's upbringing." "And his name on the birth certificate?" Elijah asked. Diane nodded. "If paternity is established, yes, he would have the right to be listed as the father." Sophia felt a mixture of relief and concern. On one hand, Mark wouldn't be able to take Helena away from her. On the other, he would still be a part of their lives, at least to some degree. "What's our best strategy here?" Elijah asked, ever practical. Diane considered this. We have two options. We can fight this aggressively, bring up his initial abandonment, make his financial motivations clear to the court, or we can try to negotiate a settlement that gives him the legal recognition he wants while maintaining your primary custody and decision-making authority. Which would you recommend? Sophia asked. Honestly? Negotiation, Diane said. Court battles are expensive, emotionally draining, and the outcomes can be unpredictable. If we can reach an agreement that protects your rights as the primary parent, while giving him the legal status he needs for this inheritance, everyone might be better off. Sophia looked at Elijah, seeking his opinion. He squeezed her hand supportively. It's your decision, Sophia. I'll support whatever you think is best for you and Elena. After a moment's consideration, Sophia nodded. Let's try negotiation first, but I want clear boundaries. I don't want him swooping in and out of Elena's life whenever it's convenient for him, and I want it in writing that he can't try to take her away from Blue Rock Farm without my permission. Diane made notes. Those are reasonable terms. I'll draft a proposal and send it to his attorney. She looked up at Sophia with a reassuring smile. You've got a strong case, Ms. Leal. The fact that you've established a stable home for your child, that you've been the one carrying her and preparing for her arrival. These things matter to the court. As they left the lawyer's office, Sophia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The situation wasn't resolved, but at least they had a plan, a way forward. How are you feeling? Elijah asked as they drove back to the farm. Better, Sophia admitted. Knowing he can't just take her away helps. And having Diane on our side, she seems to really know what she's doing. She does, Elijah agreed, and she believes in you, in your case. That's important. They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the rolling countryside passing by outside, the windows. Finally, Sophia voiced the thought that had been on her mind since their meeting. What Diane said about negotiation, about giving Mark what he wants in exchange for protecting my rights, do you think that's the right approach? Elijah considered the question carefully. I think it's practical. Fighting him in court would be exhausting and expensive, with no guaranteed outcome. This way you maintain control over what matters most, Elena's day-to-day life, where she lives, how she's raised, and his name on the birth certificate, Sophia added. It seems like such a small thing, but it feels significant somehow. It's her biological connection, Elijah acknowledged. It doesn't change who she is or who raises her. Sophia glanced at him, a sudden vulnerability in her expression. Does it bother you? That she'll have his name, not yours? The question caught Elijah off guard. I hadn't really thought about it, he said honestly. I don't need my name on a document to love her, Sophia, or to be there for her every day. His answer was so quintessentially Elijah, straightforward, genuine, focused on what truly mattered. It made Sophia love him even more. But someday, she said hesitantly, if you wanted... Elijah took his eyes off the road for a brief moment to look at her. If you're asking if I'd want to make our family official someday, the answer is yes, but there's no rush, Sophia. We have time to figure out what that looks like for us. The simple affirmation of a shared future warmed her heart. For so long, her future had seemed uncertain, frightening. Now, despite the legal challenges ahead, she could see a path forward, one where she wasn't alone. When they arrived back at Blue Rock Farm, Sophia felt a sense of homecoming that was still new but increasingly familiar. This place, which had started as a temporary haven, had become where she belonged. Elijah helped her out of the truck, his hand lingering on the small of her back as they walked toward the house. It was these small gestures of care and connection that had gradually built the foundation of their relationship. I've been thinking, he said as they reached the porch, about what you said in town, about loving each other. Sophia felt a flutter of nerves. What about it? I just want you to know that it's not because of the situation with Mark, or because of the baby, or because I feel responsible for you. His eyes met hers, honest and direct. I love you for you, Sophia. Your strength, your kindness, the way you've made this house feel like a home again. I would love you even if none of the rest of it existed. The sincerity in his voice brought tears to her eyes. I know, she whispered. That's how I love you too. Not because you rescued me or gave me a place to stay, but because of who you are. This good, steady man who sees me, really sees me." Elijah cupped her face in his hands and kissed her gently, a promise sealed between them. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever comes next with Mark, with the lawyers, with everything, we'll handle it. Together." "Together," Sophia agreed, finding strength in the word, in the bond it represented. Inside the house, they found that Elijah had received a delivery. While they were gone, a white wooden crib he had ordered for the nursery. They spent the evening assembling it, laughing at the confusing instructions, working side by side to create this tangible symbol of their future. As Sophia watched Elijah carefully tightening the last screw, a profound sense of rightness settled over her. This was where she was meant to be. This was the family she was meant to have. Not the one she had planned or expected, but one built on choice and love and commitment. "It's perfect," she said, as they stood back to admire the completed crib. Elijah slipped an arm around her waist. "Just needs a mattress, some bedding, and a baby." Sophia leaned into him, her hand resting on her rounded belly where Eleanor kicked softly as if in agreement. 8 more weeks, she murmured. "Seems so close now." "We'll be ready," Elijah assured her. "The 3 of us." The simple phrase encompassed everything. Their past, their present, their future. The 3 of us. A family, unconventional perhaps, but real and solid and true. What Sophia didn't know was that while they were preparing their home and their hearts for Elena's arrival, Mark was making preparations of his own. The legal document his attorney was drafting contained provisions they hadn't discussed, expectations they hadn't agreed to. The battle for Eleanor was just beginning. But Sophia was no longer the frightened, uncertain woman who had arrived at Blue Rock Farm 7 months ago. She was stronger now, supported, loved, and she would fight with everything she had for the family she and Elijah were building together. 2 days later, their lawyer called with news. "I've received the proposed agreement from Mr. Daniels' attorney," Diane said, her voice carefully neutral. "There are some concerning provisions I think we need to discuss." Sophia put the phone on speaker so Elijah could hear. "What kind of provisions?" "First, he's requesting regular visitation, every other weekend plus 1 month in the E. Summer, once the child is 2 years old. That's fairly standard, actually. But he's also asking for what they're calling cultural enrichment opportunities, private education beginning at age 4, with him having final say on school selection and mandatory attendance at Daniel's family functions." Sophia felt her heart sink. He wants to control her education, take her away for a month every summer. "There's more," Diane continued. "He's stipulating that the child's primary residence must be within 50 miles of Phoenix once she starts school. Essentially, he's trying to force you to move back to the city." Elijah's hand found Sophia's, offering silent support as she processed this information. "He can't do that, can he?" she asked, her voice tight with anxiety. "Force me to move?" "Courts generally don't like to restrict where a parent can live," Diane explained, "but they do consider the practicality of visitation arrangements. If you're hundreds of miles away, it makes regular visitation more challenging. Some judges might see his request as reasonable from that perspective." "What are our options?" Elijah asked. "We counter with our own proposal," Diane said firmly. "We can agree to reasonable visitation, but without the relocation requirement. We can propose alternative arrangements, perhaps longer visits less frequently to accommodate the distance. As for the education provision, we should push back strongly on that. Those decisions should be made jointly, not unilaterally by him." Sophia tried to imagine the future Mark was proposing. Elena shuttled back and forth between 2 different worlds, herself forced to move back to Phoenix, away from the home and life she had built with Elijah. "What if we refuse his terms completely?" she asked. "If we just fight this in court?" "Then we're looking at a prolonged legal battle," Diane said honestly. "Given his resources, he could drag this out for years, and while the court case is pending, there would likely be temporary visitation orders in place anyway." The reality of the situation settled heavily on Sophia's shoulders. There was no easy way out, no perfect solution that would give her everything she wanted for Elena. I need time to think about this, she said finally. Of course, Diane replied. Take a day or two, but we should respond relatively quickly to show the court we're acting in good faith. After they hung up, Sophia sat in, stunned silence, trying to process the implications of Mark's demands. Elijah waited patiently beside her, giving her space to gather her thoughts. He's trying to control us, she said finally, using Elena as leverage to force me back to Phoenix, to make her into a proper Daniel's heir. Elijah nodded grimly. That seems to be his plan. I don't want to live in Phoenix, Sophia said, her voice breaking slightly. I don't want Elena going to some snooty private school where they'll teach her that success means money and status. I don't want her spending summers with the Daniels family, learning to be ashamed of where she comes from, of who her mother is. That won't happen, Elijah said firmly. Elena will know who she is, who you are. A few weeks a year with Mark can't change that. Sophia looked at him, a new fear surfacing. But what about us? If I have to move back to Phoenix for her to start school, what happens to you and me? The question hung in the air between them, the first real challenge to the future they had begun to imagine together. Elijah took her hands in his expression serious. Sophia, I told you once that this farm has been in my family for generations. It's part of who I am, part of what I want to pass on someday. He paused, then continued with quiet certainty. But you and Elena are my family now too. If being together means I need to sell this place and move to Phoenix, then that's what I'll do. The magnitude of what he was offering stunned her. You would leave the farm for us? In a heartbeat, he said without hesitation. Farms can be replaced, you can't. Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks at his words. This man who had already given her so much was willing to give up his heritage, his home, to keep their family together. I won't let you do that, she said, wiping her tears. This place is special. It's where we found each other, where our family began. There has to be another way. Elijah pulled her into his arms, holding her close. We'll figure it out, he promised, one step at a time. That night, as they lay in bed together, a new development in their relationship since the confrontation with Mark, Sophia found herself unable to sleep, her mind turning over their limited options. What if we offered him something else? She said suddenly into the darkness. Elijah turned toward her, his voice drowsy. What do you mean? Mark wants control, but what he really needs is just his name on the birth certificate so Elena can claim her inheritance, right? What if we offered him that, plus reasonable visitation, in exchange for dropping the relocation and education demands? Elijah considered this. It might work, but what would make him agree to that? Sophia thought about what she knew of Mark, his ambition, his desire for status and recognition. Public image, she said slowly. Mark cares deeply about how he's perceived. What if we suggested that forcing a pregnant woman to relocate against her will, separating her from her support system, wouldn't look good if it became public knowledge? You mean imply that you might take the story to the media? Elijah sounded surprised but intrigued. Not threaten exactly, Sophia clarified. Just make him aware of how his actions could be perceived. His family is well known in Phoenix. Business circles. They value their reputation. Elijah propped himself up on one elbow, now fully awake. It's risky. He might see it as a threat and become even more determined to fight. Or he might realize that what he really wants, legal recognition as Elena's father and the inheritance that comes with it, doesn't require controlling where we live or how she's educated, Sophia countered. It's worth trying, isn't it? Before we give in to his demands? Elijah nodded slowly. It's worth trying. We'll call Diane in the morning, see what she thinks. Sophia settled back against the pillows, her mind still racing, but with a new sense of purpose. She wasn't the same woman who had fled from Mark months ago. She was stronger now, more determined, with too much at stake to give up without a fight. Thank you, she whispered to Elijah in the darkness. For what? He asked, pulling her closer. For believing in me, for helping me find my strength again. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Your strength was always there, Sophia. I just reminded you to look for it. As she drifted towards sleep, Sophia thought about the journey that had brought her here, from shame and fear to love and courage. Whatever happened with Mark, whatever challenges lay ahead, she knew now that she could face them, not just because she had Elijah by her side, but because she had found her own voice, her own strength, her own worth. The next morning, they called Diane and explained their new strategy. The lawyer listened carefully, occasionally asking questions, to clarify their thinking. "It's an interesting approach," she said when they had finished. "Not without risk, but potentially effective. Mark Daniels comes from a family that values their public image. The hint that this custody battle could become public knowledge might be enough to make him reconsider his more extreme demands." "So, you think we should try it?" Sophia asked. "I think it's worth attempting before we make major concessions," Diane confirmed. "Let me draft a response that incorporates this angle. Subtly, of course. We don't want it to sound like an outright threat." 2 days later, Diane called back with surprising news. "Mr. Daniels's attorney reached out this morning," she said, an undercurrent of satisfaction in her voice. "They've revised their proposal. The relocation requirement has been removed, as has the demand for final say on educational decisions." Sophia felt a surge of hope. "Really? Just like that?" "Not entirely," Diane cautioned. "They're still requesting regular visitation, 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer once the child turns 3. And they want her to attend Daniel's family events 3 times a year, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the annual family reunion." Sophia considered these terms. They were much more reasonable than the original demands. Elena would spend most of her time at Blue Rock Farm, growing up in the home Sophia and Elijah were creating for her. The visits to the Daniels family would be limited and defined. "What do you think?" she asked Elijah, who had been listening intently. "I think it's a significant improvement," he said carefully. "But the decision is yours, Sophia. You're Eleanor's mother." She appreciated his deference to her judgment, but the reality was that this decision affected all 3 of them. "It's our decision," she corrected gently. "You're part of this family too." The simple acknowledgement brought a smile to his face, warm and genuine. "Then I think we should accept these terms, with perhaps a few minor adjustments." Sophia nodded, in agreement. "Diane, can we specify that visits need to be scheduled at least 2 weeks in advance, and that major holidays alternate each year after she turns 5? "Absolutely," the lawyer replied. "Those are reasonable requests that any court would support. I'll incorporate them into our counter-proposal." After they hung up, Sophia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The situation wasn't perfect. Eleanor would still have Mark in her life, would still spend time with the Daniels family. But the core of what mattered most had been preserved. Their home at Blue Rock Farm, their family unit, their right to make decisions about Elena's upbringing, together. "It worked," she said with wonder. "He actually backed down." Elijah smiled, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "You stood up for what mattered. That's what worked." She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," he said with quiet certainty. "But I'm glad you didn't have to." The weeks that followed brought a flurry of legal documents, negotiations over specific terms, and finally, a formalized agreement that both sides could accept. Mark would be listed as Elena's father on the birth certificate, would have visitation rights as outlined, and would contribute to a trust fund for her education. In return, Sophia maintained primary physical custody and shared legal custody, with no requirement to relocate from Blue Rock Farm. As her due date approached, Sophia found herself spending less time worrying about Mark and more time preparing for Elena's arrival. The nursery was complete now, walls painted a soft yellow, white curtains framing the window, the crib ready with fresh linens. Elijah had added his own touches, a handmade mobile of wooden farm animals hanging above the crib, a small bookshelf, filled with children's books, a rocking horse he had carved himself. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, a tradition that had become sacred to them both, Elijah reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I've been waiting for the right moment," he said, suddenly nervous in a way Sophia rarely saw him. With everything happening with Mark and the lawyers, it never seemed like the perfect time. But I'm realizing there's never a perfect time for the important things in life. You just have to take the leap when your heart tells you to. Sophia's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring, a single diamond set in a band of white gold. "I'm not asking because of Elena, or because of Mark, or because of any of the complications," Elijah said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I'm asking because I love you, Sophia Leal. Because meeting you changed everything for me. Because I want to build a life with you, raise children with you, grow old with you." Tears filled Sophia's eyes as he continued, "I know it hasn't been long, and I know your life has been turned upside down this year. If you need more time, I understand, but I wanted you to know where my heart is." He took her hand gently. "Sophia, will you marry me?" For a moment, Sophia couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the depth of feeling his words evoked. 7 months ago, she had arrived at Blue Rock Farm broken and afraid, certain that love was something she would never find again. And now here she was, being offered a love so genuine, so steadfast, that it took her breath away. "Yes," she whispered finally, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Elijah, I'll marry you." His smile as he slipped the ring onto her finger was like sunrise breaking through clouds, radiant, full of promise. He kissed her then, a kiss that felt like coming home, like finding the place in the world where she truly belonged. When they parted, Sophia laughed softly through her tears. "I never expected this when I took that job stacking feed sacks." Elijah chuckled, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "I never expected it when I hired you. Life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes. Good surprises," Sophia agreed, looking down at the ring on her finger, then at the man who had given her so much more than just a piece of jewelry. He had given her a future, a family, a place to belong. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Sophia leaned against Elijah's shoulder, his arm around her, her hand resting on her rounded belly where their daughter grew. In this perfect moment, the challenges of the past and the uncertainties of the future faded away, leaving only the profound certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The first contraction hit Sophia shortly after midnight, 3 weeks before her due date. She had been sleeping fitfully, uncomfortable in the December heat, when the pain wrapped around her lower back and tightened across her abdomen like a vice. She sat up slowly, breathing through it as the prenatal class had taught her. It was probably just Braxton Hicks contractions, the practice contractions she'd been experiencing for weeks. Still, something felt different this time. "Elijah," she whispered, gently shaking his shoulder. Since their engagement 2 weeks ago, they had begun sharing a room, though they were waiting until after the baby's birth and their wedding to fully begin their life as husband and wife. He woke instantly, years of early farm mornings making him a light sleeper. "What is it? Are you okay?" "I think I might be having contractions," Sophia said, trying to keep the worry from her voice. "Real ones." Elijah was immediately alert, sitting up and turning on the bedside lamp. "How far apart? How long have they been happening?" "That was the first one," she admitted. "It's probably nothing, but—" Her words cut off as another wave of pain hit her stronger than the first. Elijah checked his watch, noting the time. "Let's keep track. The doctor said not to go to the hospital until they're about 5 minutes apart, remember?" Sophia nodded, focusing on her breathing as the contraction peaked and then gradually eased. When it had passed, she looked up at Elijah with a mixture of excitement and fear. "She's coming early." "She's impatient to meet us," Elijah said with a gentle smile, though Sophia could see the concern in his eyes. 3 weeks early wasn't dangerously premature, but it wasn't ideal either. They spent the next hour timing contractions, which were coming about 12 minutes apart, irregular but definitely real. At some point during their wait, Elijah had called Dr. Williams, the obstetrician in Riverdale who had been overseeing Sophia's prenatal care. "She says it sounds like early labor," he reported after hanging up. "Since your water hasn't broken and the contractions aren't very close together yet, she thinks we have time, but she wants us to come in since you're early." Sophia nodded, feeling strangely calm despite the enormity of what was happening. "The hospital bag is packed. It's in the closet." Elijah retrieved the bag they had prepared weeks ago, filled with everything the baby books said they would need. Comfortable clothes for Sophia, tiny outfits for Elena, toiletries, snacks, a camera. Between contractions, Sophia changed out of her nightgown into loose sweatpants and one of Elijah's flannel shirts, which had become her preferred maternity wear in the final months. As he helped her into her shoes, unable to bend over her belly to reach them herself, another contraction hit, stronger than the previous ones. "Oh," Sophia gasped, gripping Elijah's shoulder for support. That one hurt. Elijah checked his watch. Again. 8 minutes from the last one, they're getting closer together. A flicker of worry crossed Sophia's face. Is that normal? For them to speed up so quickly? Every birth is different, Elijah reminded her, repeating what they'd learned in their childbirth classes. Let's get you to the hospital and let the doctors figure out what's normal. The drive to Riverdale Memorial Hospital took 45 minutes on a good day. In the dark of night, with Sophia contracting every 6 minutes by the time they left, it felt both too long and too short. Too long to be away from medical help if something went wrong, too short to prepare mentally for the life-changing event ahead. Are you scared? Sophia asked during a break between contractions, her hand clutching Elijah's across the truck's console. He glanced at her, his eyes honest in the dim glow from the dashboard. Terrified, he admitted, but excited too. You? Same, she said, with a small smile. I keep thinking about holding her, seeing her face for the first time, but then I remember she has to get out first, and that's the scary part. Elijah squeezed her hand. You're the strongest person I know, Sophia. You've handled everything life has thrown at you. This is just one more challenge, and when it's over, we'll have Elena. His simple confidence bolstered her courage. Whatever pain lay ahead, the reward would be worth it. Their daughter, the beginning of their family together. They arrived at the hospital just before 3 in the morning. The emergency room was quiet, and they were quickly escorted to the maternity ward, where a nurse helped Sophia change into a hospital gown and hooked her up to monitors that tracked her contractions and the baby's heartbeat. Baby's looking good, the nurse said, studying the monitor. Strong heartbeat, good positioning. The doctor will be in shortly to check your progress. When they were alone again, Elijah pulled a chair close to Sophia's bed, holding her hand, as another contraction built, peaked and faded. They were coming every 5 minutes now, each one more intense than the last. You're doing great, he murmured, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. Just breathe through it, like we practiced. Dr. Williams arrived a half-hour later, reviewing the monitor readouts before examining Sophia. You're progressing faster than I would have expected for a first baby, she said. Already 4 centimeters dilated. Those contractions are doing their job. Is everything okay with the baby? Sophia asked anxiously. She's early. Her heart rate is perfect, Dr. Williams assured her. And at 37 weeks, she's considered early term, not premature. Her lungs are developed, and she's a good size based on your last ultrasound. I don't anticipate any problems. The reassurance eased some of Sophia's fears, but as the hours passed and the contractions intensified, new worries took their place. The pain was becoming harder to manage, building faster and lasting longer each time. I don't know if I can do this, she gasped after a particularly brutal contraction that left her trembling. Elijah, who hadn't left her side for a moment, brushed the hair from her forehead. You can. You are doing it. One contraction at a time. When Dr. Williams checked her again around 6 in the morning, Sophia was already 7 centimeters dilated. This is moving quickly, the doctor said. At this rate, you'll be ready to push in the next hour or two. The news was both encouraging and terrifying. Each minute brought them closer to meeting Elena, but also deeper into the most challenging physical experience of Sophia's life. As the sun began to rise, casting golden light through the hospital room window, Sophia felt a new pressure, an overwhelming urge to push. The nurse checking her again confirmed she was fully dilated. It's time, she said, pressing the call button to summon Dr. Williams. Your baby is ready to be born. The next hour passed in a blur of effort and encouragement, pain and determination. Elijah held one of Sophia's legs, counting through each push, his voice steady even as his eyes filled with tears at her struggle and courage. One more big push. Dr. Williams urged finally. "The head is right there. One more and you'll meet your daughter." Gathering the last of her strength, Sophia bore down, feeling the burning stretch as Elena's head emerged, then the strange sliding sensation as her tiny body followed. The sudden cry that filled the room was the most beautiful sound Sophia had ever heard, indignant and strong, announcing Elena's arrival to the world. "She's here," Elijah whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "Sophia, she's perfect." Dr. Williams placed the squirming, red-faced infant on Sophia's chest, and all. The pain of the past 9 hours vanished as Sophia looked into her daughter's face for the first time. Tiny features, a shock of dark hair, perfect miniature fingers that curled around Sophia's finger when she touched her daughter's palm. "Hello, Elena," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We've been waiting for you." Elijah leaned down, his face close to theirs, one large hand gently cradling Elena's head. The three of them together at last, a family forged not by blood or convention, but by choice and love and commitment. "She has your eyes," he said softly, though Elena's eyes were still the unfocused blue of all newborns. "And your chin," Sophia replied, noting the determined little jut to their daughter's jaw. It didn't matter that Elena wasn't biologically Elijah's. In every way that truly counted, she was his daughter, would be raised with his values, comforted by his presence, guided by his wisdom. The legal documents might list Mark as her father, but Elijah would be the one to rock her to sleep at night, to teach her to ride a bike, to show her how to be strong and kind and true. The nurse took Elena briefly to clean her up, weigh her, and perform the standard newborn checks. 6 pounds 4 ounces, she announced. Small but perfect, all her fingers and toes good strong lungs. When Eleanor was returned to them, wrapped in a hospital blanket with a tiny knit cap covering her dark hair, Elijah held her for the first time. His large hands looked almost comically oversized against her tiny frame, but they held her with such gentle confidence that Sophia's heart swelled with love for them both. "I never thought I'd have this again," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. "After Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. And then you showed up at the farm." Sophia understood what he meant. She too had believed. Certain doors were closed to her, the chance for a loving partner, a supportive family, a future filled with hope rather than shame. Yet here they were against all odds. "Sometimes the best things happen when we least expect them," she said, reaching out to touch his arm, connecting the three of them in a circle of belonging. The first few days with Elena passed in a blur of exhaustion and wonder. They brought her home to Blue Rock Farm 2 days after her birth, the December air crisp and cool as Elijah carried her carefully from the truck to the house. "Welcome home, little one," he said as they crossed the threshold. "This is where you'll grow up." The farmhouse had been transformed in subtle ways to accommodate their newest family member. The nursery was ready, of course, but there were other changes too. A rocking chair in the living room corner, a changing table in the downstairs bathroom, tiny clothes folded in neat stacks throughout the house. Sophia, still sore and tired from the birth, settled into the rocking chair with Elena at her breast. The quiet contentment of those moments, her daughter nursing, the soft creaking of the rocking chair, the winter sunlight streaming through the windows, felt like a blessing she had never dared to hope for. "I called Diane," Elijah said, bringing her a glass of water. "She'll file the birth certificate information with Mark's attorney. Everything's proceeding as we agreed." Sophia nodded, grateful that the legal details were being handled without her needing to worry about them. "Did you tell her we're getting married next month?" "I did," he confirmed with a smile. "She said to tell you congratulations and that she'd be happy to help with any adjustments to the custody agreement after the wedding." They had decided on a small January ceremony, just family and close friends at the farm. Sophia's parents would be coming from Arizona, their first visit since she had finally called them 3 months ago to tell them about the baby. The conversation had been difficult at first, but their excitement about becoming grandparents had eventually overcome their initial shock and disappointment. "I still can't believe how much has changed in a year," Sophia mused, looking down at Elena's peaceful face. "Last December I was planning to leave Mark's Christmas party early because I was feeling sick. morning sickness, though I didn't know it yet. Now here I am, a mother engaged, living on a farm of all places. Elijah knelt beside the rocking chair, his expression tender. Regrets? Not a single one, she said without hesitation. Everything that happened, even the painful parts, led me here. Let us here. He leaned forward and kissed her softly, then pressed another gentle kiss to Elena's head. I'm the luckiest man alive, he whispered. Elena was 2 weeks old when the letter arrived from Mark. Sophia recognized his handwriting on the envelope immediately, and her heart raced with sudden anxiety. They had communicated only through lawyers since their meeting at the cafe months ago. What could he want now? Elijah was in the barn fixing a tractor that had broken down the day before. Sophia considered waiting for him to return before opening the letter, but decided against it. Whatever Mark had to say, she could handle it on her own. Elena slept peacefully in her bassinet nearby as Sophia carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. Sophia, I received the birth certificate information from your attorney. Elena Grace Leal, a beautiful name for what I'm sure is a beautiful child. I want you to know that I intend to honor our agreement. You'll have primary custody, and I won't interfere with your life at Blue Rock Farm. I've instructed my attorney to set up the trust fund for Elena's education as we discussed. I also want to thank you for allowing me to be listed as her father. It means more than I can express in a letter. My grandfather would be pleased to know his legacy continues. The truth is, seeing you that day at the cafe, how you've built a life without me, found someone who truly supports you, it made me realize how poorly I behaved when you told me about the pregnancy. I was selfish and cruel. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just acknowledging my failings. I look forward to meeting Elena when the time is right, according to our agreement. In the meantime, please tell her someday that while I wasn't ready to be a father when she was conceived, I am grateful for her existence. Respectfully, Mark. Sophia sat for a long time after reading the letter, emotions swirling through her. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was more self-aware than she had expected from Mark. Perhaps becoming a father, even at a distance, had changed him in some small way. When Elijah returned from the barn, she showed him the letter without comment. What, do you think? He asked after reading it. Sophia considered the question carefully. I think it's the most honest Mark has ever been with me. I still don't trust him completely, but maybe he's trying to do better. Elijah nodded, folding the letter, and returning it to the envelope. For Elena's sake, I hope he is. For her sake, Sophia agreed. Eleanor would grow up knowing that Elijah was her dad in all the ways that mattered, but Mark would be part of her life too. A distant biological connection, but one that she had a right to understand and explore if she chose to. The wedding day dawned clear and crisp, a perfect January morning with frost glittering on the fields and a pale blue sky overhead. They had decided to hold the ceremony in the barn, which had been transformed with twinkling lights, winter greenery and white flowers. Sophia stood in her bedroom, looking at herself in the mirror. Her dress was simple, an ivory sheath that skimmed over her still recovering body, with delicate lace at the neckline and sleeves. Her mother had helped her style her hair, pinning it up with small white flowers woven throughout. You look beautiful, Misha, her mother said, adjusting the final pin. I've never seen you so radiant. The past month had brought healing to their relationship too. Her parents had arrived a week ago, initially awkward around Elijah and tentative with Elena, but the simple joy of their granddaughter and the obvious love between Sophia and Elijah had quickly won them over. I'm happy, Mama, Sophia said simply. Truly happy. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. That's all we ever wanted for you. We just didn't know what form that happiness would take. A soft knock at the door interrupted their moment. Sophia's father entered, stopping in his tracks when he saw his daughter in her wedding dress. Oh, Sophia, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You're a vision. In his arms was Elena, dressed in a tiny white dress with a ribbon in her dark hair. At 6 weeks old, she was alert and growing, her eyes beginning to focus on faces, her tiny personality emerging day by day. "Is my other girl ready too?" Sophia asked, reaching for her daughter. "She's been very patient while her abuela and I got her dressed," her father said, carefully transferring Elena to Sophia's arms. "But I think she's eager to see her parents get married." The simple acknowledgement of Elijah as Elena's father, coming from her traditional father, meant more to Sophia than he could know. She blinked back tears, not wanting to ruin her makeup before the ceremony. "It's time," her mother said, checking her watch. "The guests are all seated. Elijah is waiting for you." Sophia took a deep breath, looking down at Elena, and then back, at her reflection. This was it, the beginning of their official life as a family, the fulfillment of a dream she hadn't known to wish for a year ago. The barn had been heated for the occasion, making it comfortable despite the winter chill outside. As Sophia entered on her father's arm, Elena in her other arm, she saw their small gathering of guests, farm workers who had become friends, neighbors from nearby properties, Elijah's aunt and cousins from out of state. And at the end of the aisle, waiting beneath an arch of winter branches and white roses, stood Elijah. His face, when he saw her and Elena approaching, was a study in pure joy. Eyes shining, smile wide and unguarded, love radiating from every feature. This, Sophia thought as she walked toward him, was what love looked like. Not the flashy romance Mark had offered, but this steady, dependable devotion that had room for all of life's complications and challenges. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They exchanged simple vows they had written themselves, promises to support each other, to build a life together, to raise Elena with love and guidance. When it came time for the rings, Elijah surprised Sophia by having two, his wedding band, and a tiny silver ring on a chain. "This is for Elena," he explained as the minister blessed it, "a symbol that I'm committed to her too, not just to you. When she's older, she can wear it as a necklace, a reminder that she's been part of our family from the very beginning." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks at the thoughtful gesture. Even now, he found new ways to show his love for them both. "Bidi, the power vested in me," the minister said finally. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Elijah, you may kiss your bride." As their lips met in their first kiss as a married couple, Elena between them, the small gathering of guests erupted in applause and cheers. Sophia felt as though her heart might burst with happiness, complete, full, overflowing. The reception that followed was simple but joyful. A meal prepared by neighbors, a small cake decorated with winter berries, music playing softly as people ate and talked and celebrated. Eleanor was passed from guest to guest, admired and cuddled, while Sophia and Elijah moved through the crowd hand in hand, accepting congratulations and well wishes. As the afternoon wore on, snow began to fall outside, large, lazy flakes drifting down from the sky, adding a magical quality to the day. Elijah found Sophia by the barn door, watching the snow through the open crack. "Mrs. Rhodes," he said softly, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "How does it feel?" Sophia leaned back against him, savoring the solid warmth of his chest against her back. "Perfect," she replied, "like I've finally found where I belong." Elijah turned her gently in his arms to face him. "You know, when you first came to the farm, I thought you'd stay a few months at most, just another seasonal worker passing through." "And instead," she prompted with a smile, "instead, you became my whole world." He touched her cheek tenderly. "You and Elena, my family." Over his shoulder, Sophia could see her mother holding Elena, surrounded by admiring guests. Her daughter would grow up here in this community, loved by so many people. She would learn about crops and seasons, about animals and nature. She would know the satisfaction of work well done, the peace of starry nights, the joy of simple pleasures. And she would know, without question, that she was wanted and cherished, not despite the circumstances of her birth, but simply because she was Elena, precious and unique. "Dance with me?" Elijah asked, as the music changed to a slow, sweet melody. Sophia nodded, stepping into his embrace as he led her in a gentle sway. Around them, other couples joined in, her parents, Elijah's, relatives, friends old and new. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Sophia asked, looking up into his eyes. When you found out I was pregnant? Elijah nodded, his expression softening at the memory. I said you wouldn't fight this alone. You kept that promise, Sophia said, resting her head against his chest, every step of the way. And I always will, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. Whatever comes next, whatever challenges life brings us, you'll never face them alone again, either of you. As they danced slowly in the center of the barn, surrounded by people who cared for them, Sophia thought about the journey that had brought them here. From strangers to friends to family, from fear to hope to love. Elena would grow up knowing this story, how her mother had found the courage to start over, how Elijah had opened his heart and home, how sometimes the family you choose is the strongest family of all. The snow continued to fall outside, covering Blue Rock Farm in a pristine blanket of white. A clean slate, a fresh beginning, a perfect backdrop for the new chapter they were starting together. And in that moment, with Elijah's arms around her and Elena nearby, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be. Not a temporary haven, but a permanent home. Not an accidental meeting, but a destined connection. This was their story, unconventional, unexpected, but beautiful in its authenticity. Say a story of second chances and brave choices. A story of a woman who discovered her own strength, a man who opened his heart to love again, and a little girl who brought them together. A story that began with the simple, powerful promise, you won't fight this alone. A promise kept, a family formed, a love that would last a lifetime. The end.